Kim Jae wiped the sweat from his forehead as he guided his small salvage ship through the asteroid field. Another long day of searching for scrap metal and abandoned cargo. The work was boring, but it paid the bills. His scanner beeped softly in the quiet cockpit. "What's that?" he muttered, leaning forward to check the display. A weak signal was coming from somewhere deep in the rocks ahead. Emergency beacon. Someone was in trouble. Jay had been doing salvage work for 5 years now. Most distress signals he found were just old, broken transmitters attached to empty ships, dead crews, picked clean by scavengers years ago. But something about this signal felt different. It was fresh, still strong enough to reach his senses. He pushed the throttle forward and followed the beacon deeper into the asteroid field. The rocks here were bigger, darker. Perfect place to hide if you didn't want to be found. His ship's lights cut through the shadows as he searched. Then he saw it. The ship was unlike anything he'd ever seen before. It looked like it was made of crystal or glass, all smooth curves and strange angles. Beautiful but clearly damaged. Scorch marks covered one side and pieces of the hull were missing. Whatever had happened here, it had been recent. Jay docked his ship carefully to the strange vessel. The airlock systems were completely different, but after 20 minutes of trial and error, he managed to get inside. The corridor was narrow and filled with a soft blue light that seemed to come from the walls themselves. "Hello?" he called out. His voice echoed strangely in the alien space. "Anyone here?" A weak sound came from somewhere ahead. Jay followed it, his boots making soft clicks on the smooth floor. The ship felt cold, and he could hear systems failing all around him. Lights flickered. Strange humming noises stopped and started randomly. He found her in what looked like the control room. She was sitting against a curved wall, barely conscious. Her skin was pale blue, almost white, and she had the largest eyes he'd ever seen. They were dark and deep, like looking into space itself. She was small, maybe half his size, and looked fragile as glass. "Hey," Jay said softly, kneeling down beside her. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes opened slowly and focused on his face. When she saw him, fear flashed across her features. She tried to back away but was too weak to move. "It's okay," Jay said, holding up his hands. "I'm here to help. I got your distress signal." She stared at him for a long moment, then spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. Her words were strange, not quite right, but he could understand them. "The hunters," she said, her accent making the words sound musical. "They come soon, you must go, leave me." "Hunters?" Jay looked around the failing ship. "Who's hunting you?" "Bad men. They want—" She touched her head with a shaking hand. "Want this, inside. Worth much money." Jay felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold air. He'd heard stories about organ traders and worse things that happened in the outer systems, places where nobody asked questions and the law didn't reach. "What's your name?" he asked. "Neela," she whispered. "I'm Jay, and I'm not leaving you here." The ship shuddered around them, and more lights went out. Whatever was keeping this vessel running, it wouldn't last much longer. But as Jay looked at Neela's frightened face, he knew he couldn't abandon her. Even if it meant trouble for himself, he had no idea just how much trouble was heading their way. Jay was helping Neela to her feet when his ship's alarm started screaming. The sound echoed through both vessels, harsh and urgent. He'd heard that. Alarm before it meant trouble was coming fast. "What is that?" Neela asked, gripping his arm with surprising strength for someone so weak. Jay rushed to the nearest viewport and looked out into space. His heart sank. 3 large ships were emerging from behind the biggest asteroids, moving in perfect formation. They were sleek, black and covered in weapons, military-grade stuff, but not from any government he recognized. "Pirates," he said under his breath, then louder, "We need to get to my ship, now." But it was too late. A voice crackled through the comm system, speaking in clear universal standard. The accent was rough, cruel. Well, looks like someone found our little prize before we did." Jay grabbed Neela's hand and started moving toward his ship, but bright lights suddenly flooded the area around them. The pirate ships had them locked. In their spotlights, there was nowhere to run. "This is Captain Voss of the Red Syndicate," the voice continued. "You're trespassing on our salvage claim, friend. But we're reasonable people. Just hand over the blue girl and you can go about your business." Jay stopped walking. He could feel Neela trembling beside him. "They found me," she whispered. "Always they find me." "Not today," Jay said quietly. He activated his ship's comm system. "This is an independent salvage vessel. The girl is under my protection." Laughter came through the speakers. "Your protection? That's funny. Do you have any idea what she's worth?" One of the pirate ships moved closer. Through its transparent hull, Jay could see armed figures moving around inside. "Her people have the most advanced brains in the galaxy," Voss continued, his voice taking on a businesslike tone. "Their neural tissue can boost intelligence by 300% when properly processed. One brain sells for 50 million. Credits on Titan Station." Jay felt sick. He'd heard rumors about this kind of thing happening in the outer systems, but he'd never seen it up close. "That's murder," he said into the comm. "That's business," Voss replied. "Now step away from the merchandise." The lead pirate ship's weapons powered up with a low, threatening hum. Energy weapons, military grade. His little salvage ship had basic shields at best. One direct hit would turn them both into space dust. "Jay," Neela said softly, "you should go. This is not your fight." He looked down at her. Her large eyes were filled with sadness, but not surprise. She'd been through this before. How many of her people had already died to feed these monsters' greed? "Like hell," he said. The first laser blast came without warning. A bright red beam. That would have cut Neela in half. Jay didn't think, he just moved. He threw himself sideways, pushing Neela behind a control panel as the laser hit him square in the chest. The energy burned through his jacket and into his skin, but he stayed on his feet. The second blast caught his shoulder, spinning him around. The third hit his ribs. Any normal person would have been dead 3 times over. But Jay wasn't normal. He was human. The energy that should have killed him instead spread through his body, absorbed by muscles and bones that had evolved to survive almost anything. He felt the pain, sharp and burning, but he was still breathing, still standing. Impossible. Voss's voice came through the comm, no longer confident. Jay straightened up, smoke rising from his burned clothes. Behind him, Neela stared in complete shock. "Who you missed?" Jay said into the comm, his voice steady despite the pain. Then he reached for his ship's weapon controls. Time to show these pirates what happened when they messed with humans. Neela couldn't believe what she was seeing. The human was still standing. The laser blasts that had hit him would have turned any of her people into nothing but ash and memory. She had watched her own family die from much smaller weapons. But this strange creature called Jay was not only alive, he was moving toward his ship's control panel. "How?" she whispered, pressing herself against the wall. "How are you not dead?" Jay's jacket was smoking where the lasers had hit. She could see the burned fabric and the red marks on his skin underneath. But he walked like someone who had only been lightly pushed, not someone who had taken 3 direct hits from military-grade weapons. "Tough species," he said through gritted teeth, his fingers dancing over the controls. "We don't break easy." Outside, she could hear the pirates talking to each other on their comm channels. Their voices had changed. Before, they had sounded confident, almost bored. Now there was confusion and something else. Fear. "What kind of alien is that?" one of them was saying. "Scans show he's human," another voice replied. "But that's impossible. Humans are supposed to be weak." Jay let out a short laugh that turned into a cough. "Weak? Someone's been reading the wrong reports." His ship's weapons came online with a low humming sound. Neela had never seen anything like his vessel before. It wasn't elegant like her people's ships, with their smooth curves and crystal surfaces. This human ship looked like it had been built to survive anything. Thick metal plates, redundant systems, and weapons that looked like they could punch. Holes through asteroids. "Here's a free lesson about humans," Jay said into the comm, his voice getting stronger. "We're the species that survived ice ages, plagues, and wars that lasted centuries. A few laser shots? That's just Tuesday for us." The first pirate ship fired again, but this time Jay was ready. His ship's shields absorbed the blast easily, then sent back an answer. The return fire was different from the pirate's precise laser. Beams. It was a burst of projectiles, old-fashioned metal slugs fired at incredible speed. The pirates had been expecting energy weapons they could deflect or absorb. They weren't ready for simple chunks of metal moving fast enough to punch through their armor like paper. The lead ship's port engine exploded in a shower of sparks and debris. "Impossible!" Captain Voss shouted over the comm. "Our shields should have stopped that." "Your shields stop energy," Jay replied, firing another burst. "They don't stop good old-fashioned bullets." Neela watched in fascination as the human fought. Her people had always believed that intelligence was the greatest weapon in the universe. They had developed technology that could bend light, manipulate gravity, and process information faster than any other species. But they had never learned to fight like this. Jay wasn't just using advanced technology. He was using his body as a weapon too. When the second pirate ship tried to ram them, he threw his ship into a spin that would have knocked most pilots unconscious. But he stayed alert, kept firing, kept moving. The pirates' formation began to break apart. 2 of their ships had serious damage, and the third was struggling to keep up with Jay's unpredictable movements. "This isn't over, human," Voss snarled through the comm. "We know where to find you." "Looking forward to it," Jay replied. But Neela could hear the exhaustion in his voice now. The laser hits were finally starting to affect him. The pirate ships retreated into the asteroid field, but Neela knew they wouldn't go far. They would regroup, call for backup, and come back with more firepower. She looked at Jay, who was slumped over his controls, breathing heavily. His skin was pale, and she could see sweat on his forehead. He was hurt worse than he was letting on. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why did you protect me?" He turned to look at her with tired eyes. "Because it was the right thing to do." Such a simple answer. But as Neela thought about it, she realized it might be the most important thing any being had ever said to her. Jay's left arm hung useless at his side as he gripped the flight controls with his right hand. The laser blast had done more damage than he'd let on. Every movement sent sharp pain through his shoulder, but he kept the ship steady as they moved deeper into the asteroid field. "You need medical help," Neela said, floating beside his pilot. "Seat." Her people were so light they barely needed gravity to move around. "I need to get us out of here first," Jay replied, steering around a massive chunk of rock. "Those pirates won't stay away long." Behind them, his sensors were already picking up new contacts. More ships were coming from the outer edge of the system, lots of them. "Sit still," Neela said firmly. "Let me look at your wounds." "I'm fine," Jay started to say, but she was already examining his burned shoulder. Her touch was gentle, barely there, but when she pulled his torn jacket away, she gasped. "This is not possible," she whispered. Jay glanced down and saw what had shocked her. The laser burns on his chest and shoulder were already starting to heal. The angry red marks were fading to pink, and new skin was growing over the damaged areas. It wasn't fast enough to watch, but it was definitely happening. "Your people don't heal like this?" he asked, dodging between 2 asteroids that were slowly rotating around each other. "If my people took hits like these, we would be dead," Neela said, her large eyes wide with wonder. "But your body is fixing itself. I can see new cells growing." She touched the edge of one wound with a finger that was barely thicker than a pencil. "The tissue is rebuilding. Your blood is carrying repair materials to the damage. How is this possible?" "Humans are tough," Jay said, trying to sound casual even though his shoulder felt like it was on fire. "We had to be. Our planet tried to kill us for millions of years." More contacts appeared on his scanner. At least 6 ships now, all moving fast in their direction. "Tell me about your world," Neela said as she continued examining his injuries. She seemed to be trying to distract both of them from the approaching danger. "Earth?" Jay navigated through a narrow gap between 2 asteroids, using his good arm to work the controls. "It's a death trap. Ice ages every few thousand years, volcanoes that can cover entire continents in ash, diseases that kill millions, predators with teeth longer than your arm." "But you survived all of that?" "We didn't just survive," Jay said, pulling the ship into a sharp turn that made Neela grab onto his chair. "We got stronger. Every disaster made us harder to kill. Every disease made our immune systems better. Every predator made us smarter fighters." His scanner started beeping urgently. The pirate ships had split up and were trying to surround them. "Hold on," Jay said, diving toward a cluster of smaller asteroids. "This is going to get rough." The ship shook as they flew through the debris field. Chunks of rock bounced off their hull, and Jay had to use every trick he knew to stay ahead of their pursuers. His wounded arms screamed in protest every time he had to use both hands on the controls. "Your heart rate is elevated," Neela observed, still studying his injuries. "But your body is responding to the stress by releasing chemicals that help you focus and ignore pain. Adrenaline," Jay said, spinning the ship around a particularly large asteroid, "helps us fight or run when we need to." "My people don't have anything like that," Neela said sadly. "When we're hurt or scared, we just stop working." Laser fire lit up the space around them. The pirates had found their position and were closing in fast. Jay pushed the engines to maximum power, but he could see on his scanner that they were running out of room to maneuver. "There," Neela said suddenly, pointing to a gap between two massive rocks. "That opening, it's too small for their ships." Jay looked where she was pointing. She was right. The gap was barely wide enough for his smaller vessel, but the pirate ships were too big to follow. "You sure about this?" he asked. "Trust me," Neela said. "My people are good at seeing things others miss." Jay aimed for the gap and pushed the throttle forward. Behind them, the pirates realized what he was trying to do and fired everything they had. The space around them lit up with laser beams, but it was too late. They shot through the narrow opening with meters to spare. The pirate ships had to pull up or crash into the asteroids. For the moment, they were safe, but Jay knew it wouldn't last long. The Syndicate was patient, and they had resources he couldn't imagine. As his adrenaline started to fade, he felt Neela's small hand on his good shoulder. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Again." "Don't thank me yet," Jay replied, checking his fuel levels. "We're not out of this mess." But as he looked at his healing injuries and felt his body already starting to recover, he allowed himself a small smile. Maybe they had a chance after all. They found a safe spot deep in the asteroid field, hidden behind a rock the size of a small moon. Jay powered down most of his ship's systems to avoid detection, while his body continued its slow healing process. The pain in his shoulder had faded to a dull ache, and he could already move his arm better than an hour ago. Neela sat across from him in the small cabin, her pale blue skin almost glowing in the dim light. She had been quiet since their escape, staring out at the stars through the porthole with those impossibly large eyes. "You don't have to tell me anything," Jay said softly, "but it might help if I knew what we're really dealing with." She turned to look at him, and he saw something in her expression he hadn't noticed before. Not just fear or sadness, but a deep, ancient tiredness. "My people are called the Vel," she began, her musical voice barely above a whisper. "We have existed for over 20,000 of your years. We built great cities among the stars, created art that could make you weep with beauty, and discovered secrets of the universe that others could only dream of." "Sounds like you were doing pretty well," Jay said, settling back in his chair. "We were," Neela nodded, "but we made one terrible mistake. We believed that intelligence was the only thing that mattered. We focused all our efforts on expanding our minds, making ourselves smarter and smarter with each generation." She gestured to her delicate frame, her thin arms and fragile-looking bones. "We forgot about our bodies. We became so focused on thinking that we stopped caring about physical strength. Why would we need muscles when we had machines? Why develop resistance to disease when we had perfect medicine?" Jay was starting to understand. "You made yourselves too specialized." "Exactly," Neela said, a bitter smile crossing her lips. "We became the smartest species in the galaxy, but also the weakest. A strong wind could break our bones. A simple virus could kill thousands of us. And when the pirates discovered what our brains could do..." She trailed off, looking back out at the stars. "The Syndicate found us about 50 years ago," she continued. "At first, they just wanted to trade. They offered protection in exchange for some of our technology. We thought we were making friends. But they wanted more than technology," Jay guessed. "They discovered that our neural tissue could be processed into implants, chips that could boost intelligence, improve memory, increase processing speed. One Vel brain could create dozens of implants worth millions of credits each." The cabin fell silent, except for the quiet hum of the ship's life support systems. Jay felt sick thinking about it. "How many of your people are left?" he asked. When I was born, there were maybe 2,000 Vel scattered across a dozen hidden colonies, Neela said. Now, perhaps 300, maybe less. And none of you fight back? Neela shook her head sadly. We don't know how. For 20,000 years, we solved every problem with thinking, with negotiation, with clever solutions. We never learned to be violent. Even now, facing extinction, most of my people still believe there must be a peaceful answer. What do you believe? Jay asked. She was quiet for a long moment, then looked directly at him. I believed that too. Until today. Until I watched you take those laser blasts meant for me. You didn't think about it, didn't calculate the odds or consider the logical response. You just acted. Anyone would have done the same thing, Jay said. No, Neela replied firmly. Most species would have run. The smart thing, the logical thing, would have been to save yourself. But you're not most species, are you? Jay shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Humans aren't special. You survived when you should have died, Neela interrupted. You fought when you were outnumbered. You protected someone you barely knew because it felt right to you. My people have studied thousands of species across the galaxy, and I've never heard of anything like that. She leaned forward, her large eyes intense. The Syndicate has ships, weapons, and numbers, but they've never faced anything like humans before. They think in terms of profit and loss, strength and weakness. They don't understand creatures who fight, not because they have to, but because they choose to. So what are you asking me to? Jay said, though he thought he already knew the answer. Help me get home, Neela said simply. Let me show my people that there's another way to survive, that sometimes the best solution isn't the smartest one. Jay looked out at the stars, thinking about the pirates still hunting them, about a dying species too gentle to save itself, and about the choice he was about to make. All right, he said finally. Let's go save your people. The smart thing would have been to find the nearest space station and drop Neela off. Let someone else deal with the pirates and the dying alien race. Jay had his own life to worry about, his own bills to pay. That's what any reasonable person would do. But as he sat in his pilot's chair looking at the star charts showing 3 different routes to safety, he couldn't bring himself to choose any of them. The Kepler station is only 6 hours away, he said out loud, more to himself than to Neela. They have good security there. The Syndicate wouldn't dare attack you in public. Neela nodded from her seat beside him. That would be the logical choice, she agreed. You've already risked enough for a stranger. Right, Jay said, but his finger hovered over the navigation controls without pressing anything. It's not my problem. It's not, Neela confirmed. They sat in silence for several minutes. Outside the viewports, the stars waited patiently for his decision. Your people, Jay said finally. Where exactly are they hiding? The coordinates I can give you, Neela said carefully. But it's 3 days through dangerous space. Pirates, raiders, and worse things patrol those routes. Most ships that go there don't come back. And if I take you to the station instead? I'll find another way home, Neela said simply. Eventually, Jay knew what eventually meant. She'd end up paying some smuggler everything she had for passage, and they'd probably sell her to the Syndicate halfway there. Or she'd try to steal a ship and get caught. Either way, she'd never see her people again. Damn it, he muttered, and set. Course for Vel space, why? Neela asked as the ship's engines hummed to life. This makes no sense for you, Jay shrugged, focusing on the navigation display to avoid looking at her. Sometimes humans don't make sense. Over the next 3 days, Neela proved that statement right. She watched everything Jay did with the intense focus of a scientist studying a new species, which he realized was exactly what she was doing. You gave up a profitable salvage run to help me, she observed on the first day as they traveled through hyperspace. Your fuel costs alone will put you in debt for months. Yeah. Well, Jay said, checking their course, money isn't everything. For most species, survival resources are the primary motivator for all decisions, Neela said, making notes on a small device. Yet you regularly act against your own economic interests. You're studying me like a lab rat, Jay pointed out. I'm trying to understand, Neela said. My people have analyzed thousands of species over the centuries. We've never encountered anything like human behavior patterns. On the second day, they had to hide from a syndicate patrol ship for 6 hours, in the shadow of a dead planet. While they waited in silence, Neela continued her observations. "Your stress levels are elevated," she whispered, watching Jay monitor the sensors. "But instead of becoming paralyzed or seeking escape, you're planning contingencies for fighting." "Fight, or flight response," Jay explained quietly. "Most humans have it. But you choose fight more often than flight," Neela noted, "even when flight would be safer." "Sometimes," Jay admitted. "Why?" He thought about it for a moment. "Because some things are worth fighting for, I guess. Even when those things don't benefit you directly, especially then." Neela was quiet for a long time after that. On the third day, as they approached the edge of Vel space, she finally asked the question that had been bothering her. "The day we met," she said, "you could have searched my ship and left. You could have ignored my distress call entirely. You could have handed me over to the pirates and collected a reward. Any of those choices would have been better for your survival." "Probably," Jay agreed. "So why didn't you make any of those choices?" Jay was quiet for so long that Neela thought he wasn't going to answer. Finally, he spoke. "Because I looked at you, scared and hurt and asking for help, and I saw," he paused, searching for the right words. "I saw someone who mattered, someone worth saving, and I couldn't live with myself if I walked away from that." "But I'm not even your species," Neela said, confused. "I can't help you survive or reproduce, or gain resources. By every logical measure, I'm meaningless to you." "Logic doesn't always drive human decisions," Jay said. "Sometimes we do things because they feel right, not because they make sense." Neela stared at him for a long moment, then made another note on her device. "I think," she said slowly, "that this might be why humans have survived so long on a dangerous planet. You don't just protect yourselves, you protect each other. Even strangers." "Maybe," Jay said as the first Vel colonies appeared on his scanner, "or maybe we're just too stubborn to know when to quit." "Either way," Neela said softly, "it might be exactly what my people need to learn." Retries SF the Vel colony was nothing like Jay had expected. Instead of grand cities or impressive structures, he found a collection of simple domes hidden inside, a hollowed-out asteroid. The buildings were beautiful but fragile-looking, made of the same crystal material as Neela's ship. Everything glowed with soft, peaceful light. "We used to build magnificent cities," Neela said as they docked. "Towers that reached into the clouds, art galleries that stretched for miles. Now we hide in rocks and hope no one finds us." As they walked through the colony's corridors, Jay noticed how quiet everything was. The few Vel they passed moved slowly, gracefully, but there was a sadness in their large eyes that reminded him of ghosts. These people were dying, and they knew it. "The council is waiting," Neela said, leading him to a larger dome at the colony's center. "They want to thank you for bringing me home safely." The council chamber was a circular room with walls that seemed to be made of living crystal. 5 elderly Vel sat on raised platforms, their pale blue skin almost transparent with age. When Jay entered, they all turned to look at him with expressions of wonder and curiosity. "So this is a human," said the eldest, her voice like wind through crystal chimes. "We have heard stories but never seen one in person." "Thank you for protecting our daughter," said another council member. "Neela has told us of your sacrifice. Such behavior is unusual." Jay shifted uncomfortably. "I just did what seemed right." "Yes," the eldest said, studying him carefully. "That is what makes it so unusual." Neela stepped forward. "Honored elders, I have learned much during my journey with Jay. I believe there may be hope for our people yet." "Hope?" The third council member's voice was bitter. "Child, we have 300 people left in the entire galaxy. The Syndicate has new ships, better weapons, and unlimited resources. It is only a matter of time before they find us all. We have accepted our fate," added the fourth elder. "We will make our final years as peaceful as possible and try to preserve our knowledge for whoever comes after us." Jay listened to their resignation with growing frustration. These people had technology that could reshape the galaxy, minds that could solve problems no other species could even understand, and they were just giving up. What if you didn't have to accept it? He said suddenly. The council members turned to look at him in surprise. I'm sorry, the eldest said. What if there was another option? Jay continued, his mind racing. You said the syndicate has ships and weapons, but you have something they don't. And what is that? The bitter council member asked. You have allies, Jay said. Or you could have allies. Neela's eyes widened as she understood what he was suggesting. Jay, you can't mean... Why not? He said, turning to address the entire council. You need protection. Humans need better technology. Seems like a fair trade to me. Humans? The eldest leaned forward. You would propose an alliance between our species? I'm proposing survival, Jay said bluntly. You're the smartest people in the galaxy, but you can't fight. Humans aren't the smartest, but we're really good at fighting. Together we might actually have a chance. The council members exchanged glances, communicating in a way that seemed almost telepathic. Human, the second elder said carefully. Do you understand what you're suggesting? An alliance between species is not a simple matter. It would require trust, cooperation, and sacrifices from both sides. I understand, Jay said, but I also understand that doing nothing guarantees extinction. For your people. And what would humans gain from such an arrangement? The fourth elder asked skeptically. Jay gestured around the crystal chamber. Look at this place. You've got technology that could revolutionize space travel, medicine, communication. You can build ships that are works of art and computers that think faster than any AI. Our technology has made us weak, the bitter council member pointed out. Only because you used it wrong, Jay replied. You made yourselves smarter but forgot to stay strong. Humans made the opposite mistake. We stayed tough but never got as smart as we could be. What if we combined both approaches? The eldest was quiet for a long moment, her ancient eyes studying Jay's face. You would truly risk your people's safety to help ours? She asked. My people have been risking their safety to help others for thousands of years, Jay said. It's what we do. But why? She pressed. What do you gain from protecting strangers? Jay thought about Neela, scared and alone in her damaged ship. He thought about the 300 Vel hiding in asteroids, waiting to die. He thought about all the species across the galaxy who suffered while others looked away. We gain the knowledge that we did the right thing, he said simply. Sometimes that's enough. The council fell silent. Outside the chamber, Jay could hear the quiet sounds of the colony going about its daily routine, unaware that their future was being decided in this room. Finally, the eldest spoke. We will consider your proposal, Human Jay. But such a decision cannot be made quickly. There are risks. The biggest risk is doing nothing, Jay interrupted gently. At least this way you have a chance. Perhaps, the eldest said, perhaps you are right. As they left the council chamber, Neela walked beside him in thoughtful silence. Do you really think it could work? She asked finally. Jay looked around. At the hidden colony, at the beautiful, fragile people trying to survive in a hostile universe. I think, he said, we're about to find out. The alarm started screaming at dawn. Jay jerked awake in the small quarters the Vel had given him, instantly alert. He'd been expecting this moment for 2 days now. They found us, Neela's voice came through the comm system, tight with fear. 6 ships, moving fast toward the colony. Jay was already pulling on his boots. How long do we have? 20 minutes. Maybe less, came the reply from the control center. The council is calling an emergency meeting. No time for meetings, Jay said, grabbing his jacket and running for the docking bay. Get everyone to the shelters and prep my ship for launch. He found the control center in chaos. Vel were moving around frantically, their usual calm completely shattered. The eldest council member was at the main display, her face pale as she watched the approaching ships. They have us surrounded, she said as Jay entered. 3 attack ships and 3 cargo vessels. They're not here to negotiate. What about your defenses? Jay asked. We have shields around the colony, but they won't last long against that much firepower, another Vel replied. Once they break through, we have nowhere to run. Jay studied the tactical display. The syndicate ships were moving in a standard attack formation, confident and methodical. They expected easy prey. They're about to learn something new about humans, he said, heading for the door. "Where are you going?" Neela called after him. "To even the odds," Jay replied. 5 minutes later, his ship was launching from the hidden docking bay. The Syndicate forces were so focused on the colony's shields that they didn't notice one small vessel slipping out the back way. "Human ship. This is Captain Voss," came the familiar voice over the comm. "You're outnumbered 6-1. Surrender now and we might let you live." "Counteroffer," Jay replied, swinging his ship around behind the nearest cargo vessel. "Leave now and I might let you keep your ships." Voss laughed. "You can't be serious." Jay opened fire. His first target was the cargo ship's engine section. Instead of the precise laser strikes the pirates expected, he used old-fashioned explosive rounds that punched through their hull like paper. The ship lost power instantly and began drifting helplessly. "Impossible!" Voss shouted. "How did you—" The second cargo ship tried to turn and face him, but Jay was already moving. This was where human reflexes made all the difference. While other species had to think through each maneuver, Jay was operating on pure instinct, his body reacting faster than his conscious mind could process. He dove under the cargo ship and fired up through its belly, targeting the cargo hold where they probably kept their captured prisoners. The explosion that followed told him he'd guessed right. "Colony control," he said into his comm. "I need targeting data on the attack ships." "We can provide sensor information," came Nyla's voice. "But how can we help coordinate—" "Just tell me where they are and where they're going," Jay interrupted, pulling his ship into a steep climb as laser fire lit up the space around him. "I'll handle the rest." What happened next would have been impossible for any other species. The Vel provided precise calculations about ship positions, velocities, and weapon ranges. But instead of using that data to find a safe escape route, Jay used it to plan attacks that should have been suicide. He flew directly at the lead attack ship, ignoring the laser fire that scorched his hull. At the last second, he rolled underneath and fired up into their weapon systems. The ship's main guns exploded in a shower of sparks. "His ship should have been destroyed 3 times over," one of the pirates was saying over the open comm channel. "What kind of armor does he have?" "It's not the armor," Neela's voice came from the colony. "It's the pilot. Humans can survive damage. That would kill anyone else." Jay proved her point by ramming the second attack ship head-on. The impact threw him against his restraints hard enough to crack ribs, but he stayed conscious and kept fighting. The pirate ship, built for speed rather than durability, crumpled like paper. 2 attack ships down, he reported, blood running from his nose. Working on the third. The remaining attack ship tried to flee, but Jay was relentless. He chased it through the asteroid field, taking hit after hit from its rear guns. Each blast would have disabled most vessels, but his ship kept flying through sheer determination and human engineering that prioritized survival over elegance. "Colony sensors show weak points in their rear shield array," Neela reported. "Coordinates transmitting now." Jay lined up his shot and fired. The attack ship's engines exploded, leaving it dead in space. In less than 10 minutes, he'd single-handedly disabled 6 Syndicate vessels. "This is impossible," Voss's voice came weakly over the comm. "No one fights like this." "You're right," Jay replied, limping his damaged ship back toward the colony. "Humans fight differently. We don't calculate odds or worry about fair fights. We just keep going until the job is done." As he docked at the colony, a crowd of Vel had gathered to watch. They stared at his battered ship and his bloodied face with something approaching awe. The human fought 6 ships alone, one of them whispered, and won. "Not alone," Jay said, nodding to Neela. "Your people provided the intelligence I needed. Without those targeting coordinates, I never could have pulled this off." The eldest council member approached him slowly. "Perhaps," she said quietly, "this alliance you propose has more merit than we realized." Jay wiped the blood from his face and smiled. "Lady, we're just getting started." The council chamber looked different now. Instead of the quiet resignation Jay had seen before, there was something new in the air. Hope, maybe, or at least the possibility of it. The 5 elders sat in their crystal seats, but their posture had changed. They weren't waiting to die anymore. "The Syndicate ships have been captured," the eldest announced. "Their crews are being held in our detention facility until we can decide what to do with them." "More importantly," added the second elder, "word. So this battle is already spreading through the underground networks. Other Vel colonies are asking questions. They want to know how we survived. Jay sat in a chair they'd brought for him, his ribs still aching from the fight. Neela stood beside him, serving as translator when the elders spoke in their own language. "They're saying that what you did today has never happened before," she explained. "No one has ever defeated 6 syndicate ships with a single vessel." "It wasn't just me," Jay insisted. "Without your targeting data and sensor readings, I would have been space dust in the first 5 minutes." "Yes," the eldest said, leaning forward. "That is exactly the point. Separately we are weak. Together we might be something new." The third elder, who had been quiet during the previous meeting, now spoke up. "We have been discussing your proposal for 2 days. The demonstration you provided today has clarified certain aspects of the arrangement." "Such as?" Jay asked. "Such as the fact that human military capabilities are far beyond what we had imagined," the fourth elder replied, "and that our technological assistance might be more valuable to your species than we initially calculated." Neela smiled slightly. "They're saying you've impressed them." The eldest stood up, a formal gesture among her people. "We would like to propose specific terms for this alliance." "I'm listening," Jay said. "We offer our advanced technologies," she began, "faster-than-light communication systems that work instantly across any distance, energy manipulation techniques that could power your cities for centuries, medical knowledge that could extend human lifespans significantly." "And in return?" Jay asked, though he already knew the answer. "Protection," the second elder said simply. "Not just for this colony, but for all remaining Vel settlements. We want the Syndicate to know that hunting our people means fighting yours." The implications hit Jay like a physical blow. This wasn't just about saving one small colony. They were talking about humanity becoming the protectors of an entire species. The responsibility was enormous. "I can't speak for all humans," he said carefully. "I'm just one guy with a salvage ship." "You are the first human to offer us hope in 50 years, the eldest replied. "That makes you our ambassador, whether you intended it or not." Over the next several hours, they worked out the details. The Eden Vel would share their most advanced technologies with human scientists and engineers. In return, human military forces would establish protective units around Vel colonies and hunting grounds. "We'll need to start small," Jay explained. "A few volunteers at first, people who understand what they're signing up for. But once word gets out about what you can offer, humans will come," Neela finished. "Your species doesn't turn down the sea. Chance to explore new frontiers." "Or to help people who need it," Jay added. The alliance was formalized with a ceremony that night. The entire colony gathered in the main chamber as the elders signed the agreement using crystalline tablets that would preserve the document for thousands of years. Jay found himself wearing formal Vel robes that had been hastily adjusted for his human proportions. The fabric felt strange, like wearing liquid light. "How do I look?" he asked Neela. "Like someone who changed the course of galactic history," she replied with a smile. As the ceremony concluded, Jay stood before the assembled Vel and tried to find words for what this moment meant. "6 months ago, I was just a guy looking for scrap metal in asteroid fields," he said. "I never imagined I'd be standing here, representing my entire species. But that's the thing about humans. We don't always plan for the big moments. We just do what feels right and hope it works out." He paused, looking out at the crowd of pale, graceful beings who had entrusted their future to his species. "You asked me once why I took those laser blasts for someone I'd just met," he continued, his eyes finding Neela in the crowd. "The truth is, I didn't think about it. I just saw someone who needed help, and I helped. That's what humans do. Today, we're making that same choice on a bigger scale. We're choosing to help, not because it's profitable or easy, but because it's right. And maybe that's what the galaxy needs more of, people willing to take a few hits for strangers." The applause that followed was soft, musical, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. But Jay could hear something else in it. Gratitude, relief, and the sound of a species that had just learned it might have a future after all. Later, as the celebration continued around them, Neela found Jay standing alone on an observation deck, looking out at the stars. "Any regrets?" she asked. Jay thought about his old life, The simple routine of salvage work, the quiet solitude of space. Then he thought about what lay ahead. First contact protocols, diplomatic meetings, the complex work of building trust between species. "Ask me in 100 years," he said with a grin. Outside the viewport, human ships were already appearing on the horizon, drawn by the news of the Alliance. The galaxy was about to become a very different place, and it all started with one human who couldn't walk away from someone who needed help.